Hi, my name is Chase Preston. For my social issue persuasive presentation for Compton 10, I'm going to be talking about the American prison system and how it's currently failing to decrease crime rates, how it's unfairly convicting citizens for longer periods of time, and is spending more of taxpayers' money every single year. So there are three goals associated with prison systems. Is one, isolating those people who committed crimes from the rest of society. That's a given. Two, punish those prisoners for committing the crime. And three, deter others from committing the crime as well. But the United States is currently failing in all of those categories. After 1982, the war on drugs began, and that was to combat the high level of drugs coming in, the high level of traffickers coming in. But the prison population just exploded. According to the Sentencing Project, 2.2 million people are currently incarcerated in the United States, which is close to 1% of our population, which is 10 times more than 50 years ago. This means a large part of the population is affected by this high level of incarceration, either through actually being convicted or a family member being incarcerated. We can see right here, I have a graph of the level of inmates, the inmate population, and we can see after 1982, it just exploded, and it's currently we have the highest amount of inmates of anyone in the world. We can also talk about the discrimination in arrests. Minorities make up 37% of the population, but 67% of the inmate population. A quote from Sentencing Project said, black men are 6 times as likely to be incarcerated as white men, and Hispanic men are more than twice as likely to be incarcerated as non-Hispanic white men. So we can see that the war on drugs has been a failure. There's been higher amounts of incarceration rates, little deterrent of crime, and discriminatory practices in our judicial system. And so we have isolated prisoners from society, but we have not helped them rehabilitate. We have punished more than we've helped. We can see at this bottom graph how we fare to other countries. We have a huge incarceration rate per 100,000, followed by Russia and Rwanda. And these high levels of incarceration rates, they can be good if they deter crime as well. But we have not deterred enough crime to justify these high level of incarceration. So the Brennan Center for Justice at New York University School of Law confirms this by stating, since 2000, the effect of increasing incarceration on our crime rate has been essentially zero, end quote. So this means that the harsh incarceration rates have done very little to prevent inmates from being arrested again, which is referred to as recidivism. So after the war on crime began, there was a large influx of inmates starting to overcrowd our prisons, and state governments had to figure out how to house all of the inmates while saving money and reducing crime. Many of the states actually turned to privatizing their prison system, outsourcing to companies specializing in corrections facility. So the most prominent company used is the Corrections Corporations of America. According to Richard A. Opel Jr. from the New York Times, 30 states hired CCA to help run their prison systems. These states are not completely filled with private prisons, but a large portion of their inmates are in CCA prisons. The CCA and other companies like them promise to take the burden of the higher rates of inmates, save the taxpayer money, and help reduce crime. But the problem with privatizing prisons to a for-profit company is that they are for-profit. The more inmates that they have, the more money that they get, which incentivizes them to have more convictions and longer sentences. A study by the University of Wisconsin in 2016 stated that private prisons give out twice as many infractions as state-run prisons. Infractions are penalties given out to prisoners for having contraband, fighting, or disobeying guards. So once an infraction is given out, their sentences are lengthened, which is a conflict of interest because CCA prisons benefit of higher inmate population. A quote from Peter Kerwin of the University of Wisconsin states, inmates in private prisons are likely to serve 2 to 3 more months behind bars than those assigned to public prisons, and 15% more likely to be punished for a conduct violation. At the same time, there was no reduction in recidivism, the rate at which prisoners reoffend after release, for inmates at private prisons, despite industry claims to lower recidivism rates through high quality and innovative rehabilitation programs. So, going back to our three goals of our prison systems, we have been focusing more on punishing the prisoners instead of rehabilitating. There's a higher recidivism rate, there's a higher incarceration rate. And CCA and other companies like this definitely benefit. It is extremely profitable for them. According to the CCA 10K form, which is their annual business report, they made around $1.7 billion in 2015, or around $3,300 per inmate. This company is profiting off of keeping inmates in their prisons. And how they do that is they usually put occupancy clauses in their contracts that they have with state governments, which basically says that they have to retain a certain amount of prisoners or the state faces a lawsuit. In Arizona in 2011, the Management and Training Corporation, MTC, which is another corrections company, had in their contract that they had to keep a 97% inmate population. They failed to do so, and the Arizona state government had to pay them $3 million of taxpayer money. And that's from Prison Legal News. This incentivizes state governments to keep inmates locked up in these private prisons, and it's more like tenements in an apartment instead of prison. Tom Beasley, the co-founder of CCA, said in 1988, "You just sell prisons like you are selling cars, or real estate, or a hamburger." And the privatization of prisons is a part of our growing incarceration rate and our ineffective means to change it. So to change this, we should either move away from corporations like CCA to go back to state-run prisons instead, or renegotiate the contract so that we do not have the occupancy clauses keeping a higher rate of incarceration of inmates. Another thing that we can do is petition the government. We are a democratic state. If we want this change, we can contact our Congress members. We can vote people in who voice our opinion. This issue goes under the radar, but with 2.2 million inmates, we are all affected. We most likely have family members or friends or people that we know who are hurt by these lengthy sentences. And so we have to understand that even though it's a taboo subject, if we feel as though these high incarceration rates, these lengthy sentences are hurting America, we have to petition people to change it. We have to vote people in who will voice our opinion. And so that's it. Thank you.